Mr. Ambassador, why the central government led by Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has lost the control of Fallujah city and part of Anbar?
First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity today to talk on such an important topic. The situation in the whole region has transformed over the last years, mainly after the Arab awakening, and more so within the vacuum of power being created in the region by the removal of the various heads of governments. And that in itself is one key reason. The other aspect of it has led to the Syrian situation, which we saw, in which there is no clear scenario as to what's taking place or what will take place in Syria. With the open border between Syria and Iraq, because we haven't got the capability to protect our borders, we have no airspace, and the army is still not ready or capable to defend the whole border. Bearing in mind it's a big border, meant that it became a safe haven of a certain extent to the terrorist organizations, including ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of their affiliate. So that's one aspect. Then you have the other aspect of the internal Iraqi politics, in which the grasp of central government was weak because of the whole state collapsed, and now we're trying to revitalize and re-energize the central government to have more control of that. So you have an internal element, and you have an external element leading to that. And the third element to do within that is the whole concept of people belonging to the state, and for the state to have control of weapon and to have control of a flow. That in itself is a transformation in Iraq.
But why this disturbance followed by Prime Minister order to remove the Sunni protesters' tents?
The protesters and the tent and the arrest of the parliamentarian are all manifestation. They are not the root causes. The demonstration, the illegal demonstration, has been there for over a year now. They have been blocking the highways. We have accommodated for it. We have brought into, set up a highest committee at the vice prime minister level, who has spoken to the protesters, who has done investigation, made a public, transparent report, who did criticize certain element of the own government, saying that some human abuses took place, some arrests were not warranted, and so on. So we know that. We know there were some mistakes, and we're trying to resolve that. So what you see now in the arrest and others are the result, not the causes of it. The causes has been there for some time, and we have tried to be patient, and we have tried to be inclusive in our address of it. Iraq is no longer the police state. Iraq is no longer where, during Saddam Hussein, he used Scud missiles during the Intifada in '91 and destroyed towns and cities. Our Iraqi lives are sacred, and we'd like to protect it and reduce civilian. That's why, for example, we're approaching the United States for cooperation in intelligence, in more sophisticated tools, so that we minimize the damage.
But there is the Sunni claims talking about discrimination. They say the Prime Minister Maliki intentionally ignore and bypass Sunnis politicians. For example, they talk about Tariq al-Hashimi, Vice President Rafi al-Isawi, and now Ahmad al-Alwani. Question is, what has been the government responses to Sunnis' aspiration?
We have, let's put it this way, the government have tried to be even-handed in its address. At the same time, it arrested the parliamentarian for his abuse of power, for shooting back at the Iraqi forces. His brother was killed as a result of that shooting back, literally. At the same time, we arrested the leader of the Shia militia, who was called Asa'ib al-Haq, who claimed that they have done certain acts against MEK and against the Saudi government, against the Saudi borders, and so on. So we have tried to be uneven in our address to that. In addition to that, you have also, I think it's a mistake to look at the Iraqi situation as purely Shia-Sunni problem. A lot of people who leave Anbar and Fallujah now go to Karbala and Najaf, who are pure Shia towns, to get safe haven for themselves. So it's a clear sign that it's not a sectarian or the sectarian element is only one element. It's not the only element. You have the governor of Anbar calling for support from the government against the Al-Qaeda militia. So you have a number of complexities. Certain politicians, it's easier for them to use that as a tool for attracting more votes in the upcoming election, or for looking at the whole Iraq in a purely Kurdish, Shia, Sunni paradigm. That's not the case. It's a bit more complicated. The legacy is a bit more complicated, and the work has to be done, has to be a national project by all leaders.
Now, what is Mr. Maliki's plan to solve the current problem?
We have went back to the parliament, get approval for the awakening or sahwa to try to get more local support. We have restrained our forces from storming into Fallujah because we don't want to increase any civilian casualties. We're working with American friends to obtain more sophisticated weapons, counterintelligence, sharing or analysis on intelligence data, and obviously use whatever tools we need, the F-16s, the drones, whatever we need to reduce the casualties and to kick out the Al-Qaeda once and for all out of Iraq. It's a tumor in our body which we cannot accommodate.
Sometimes Sunnis talk about making a federal region like a KRG. What the central government is opposed the Sunni self-rule similar of the KRG in northern Iraq?
No, the whole federal question is still outstanding. It's a work in progress in the whole of Iraq. It's not within the... We still have problems with the KRG government. It's already set up. We don't have an issue of constitutionality. We have an issue of rights and responsibilities. We also have the whole federal question in a sense of the key question is it a political entity or is it an administrative process? If it's an administrative process, it's easier to address it. If it's a political entity, then I'm afraid the current constitution does not allow for it. It needs to be readdressed. And in addition to that, we have, as a central government, have removed some of the ministries, municipal ministries and others in the pipeline to be removed because we don't think that's viable, and the local authorities need to take that. The oil share, the oil barrel for the provinces, Basra used to get one, now they get $5 per barrel if it's produced in that. Misan, same. Kirkuk, same. So we're working on that aspect as well of it, so that we give more authority to the provinces. And let me say that the governor of Basra, the previous governor, maybe the current governor, the governor of Baghdad and others, they're all talked about federal entity. It's not a sacred, or it's not an issue to do within the Sunni part of Iraq or the western part of Iraq. All of Iraq have been talking about federal because they think this is the only solution they have. And to me personally, I think it's part of the solution. It's not the whole solution.
You said you have still problem with KRG.
We definitely have. The whole issue of where does the central government authority lie versus what are the local authorities still outstanding. Let me give you an example. Airports, borders, export of oil and others. These are simple taxations. There are a lot of issues still making in progress. I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying it's still not cleared up. It's still not. There is no still smoothness or clarity of that processes, and this is to do with who's trying to have more control of local versus central government issues.
Okay, let me talk about Anbar problem. Both Iran and the United States have offered to help Iraq government to fight and eliminate Al-Qaeda.
Mm-hmm. We also have the French government offered as well.
Have you responded to their offers?
No, with the United States, we have a strategic framework agreement. We have already cooperation at the highest level. So we already have, this month, for example, we will have two delegations, one from the Ministry of Defense, the other is from the Minister of Higher Education, come to Washington to talk about the strategic framework agreement in relation to their aspect, education or military cooperation.
What kind of help are you asking US?
No, we already have an ongoing armament, having all the weapons or majority of the weapons for our army based on US military school of thought. So the tanks, the F-16s, the Apaches, the air defense, integrated air defense systems, we already have that, and the relationship since 2005 on the military cooperation has been strong. What we want now as well, in addition to that, is addressing our immediate issues, which is to do with counter-insurgencies, to do with counter-terrorism, to do with better data analysis, better training in the elite teams in going there. So this is what we need help in, and we're working with our American friends.
At this time,
it's on working
with
on
Al Qaeda. What type of military aid?
We already have a request in Congress for Apache helicopters. That would be a significant boost. We also have requests already for other type of missiles and other types of drones and so on. That's ongoing. We also have a request for tanks. So we have an ongoing project and we have an immediate project. The immediate project are to deal with the current situation which we need now in Western Iraq, in the Anbar province, and the Americans have shown a lot of flexibility and understanding, and even Congress now have much better. They have, as far as I'm aware, unofficially they have given us the thumbs up, but there is still small resistance, and we're making sure that resistance is no longer there. And we need to go through the official channels as well. They are awaiting for official request on that aspect as well. And you know, the FMS process within the United States Congress is not an easy process. It's a prolonged process. This is a big country with checks and balances. We have to appreciate and understand that.
Is there any guarantee that weapons supplied by United States will not be find their way in hands of American enemy?
Well, the Iraqi defenses are working closely with the United States. So we are more or less heavily dependent, and we chose that, by the way. It's not, this was primarily more done after the troop withdrawal. So it's not something the United States forced on us. Our military professionals thought that it's best to go to US, and we appreciate that as a government. And we have the framework, the legal framework, the political buy-in into the Iraqi process to have partnership with the United States. So that's one aspect. The other aspect of it is the trust required between two states to have allies, to be allies with each other. The key question I'm raising now in Congress and others is Iraq an ally of you? If it is, then we need to have that privilege of an ally. If we are not, then what do we need to do to become that ally? It's a two-way process. Right. So this is what we've been working. So if it's an issue of trust, then let's find out what are the checks and balances needed within the Iraqi system, within the American system. In addition to that, any weapon we purchase from the United States, part of the contract of purchase is the usage, the end user. And that's already there. The Americans have close cooperation with us to get better understanding of our methodology, of our structure, of our defenses. And we have we're trying to get a better understanding of the U.S. approach and processes. And to that effect, we're working pretty well together.
Right. But what is the role of U.S. military advisor present to Iraq?
We have trainers. We have a lot of new tools we're using in the Army, in the Navy, in the Air Force. We have a F-16, which means we have to prepare the base for it. Our Iraqi pilots being trained here in the United States. So we need those advisors to help us in the training and the facilitation. These are sophisticated weapons. We are arming and providing weapons to our whole Air Force and to our whole Navy and to our whole army. So it's not a mixture of few items and few tools. It's more to do with technical abilities than anything else. Let's not forget, at one time there was more than 150,000 US soldiers. So we totally moved away from that time. We're no longer asking the United States to have their forces in Iraq, or what the expression is, boots on the ground. We are no longer asking for that. Iraq is willing to have its own blood, pay for it itself, but we need cooperation and we need technology transfer.
Are the U.S. military advisor any form are involved in setting strategy to combat with rebellions in order to region Fallujah and Anbar?
I'm not sure about the Fallujah specifically, but our cooperation is counterterrorism, it's data analysis, it's the latest tools we need. So they advise us what capabilities there are, and we're going to the Russians as well. Let's be clear on that one. We're even going to the Russians because the Russians said these helicopters there are armored helicopters, and they can fulfill your needs. We're going getting them. We have an urgency to counter terrorism. We have an urgency to protect our Iraqi bloods. Whatever tools, wherever, whomever, whenever we have to do things, we will do it. We are under no obligation to work with only one partner, whether it's Iranians or Americans or Russians or French. No. Whatever the Iraq needs, that's a new Iraq. New Iraq is saying, I'm independent, I choose my partners, and I have the political process, transparency to deal with these partners. And we are not shying away from it. The Prime Minister came here in November to DC, went to Tehran in December, and there is no contradiction there.
The question is now, in the United States, many under the impression that Mr. Nouri al-Maliki and his government is influenced by Iran. For example, Mr. Maliki's government closely work with Iran, and about Syria, support Syrian government like Iran. Question is, how would you respond?
We have officially, unofficially, through back channels, through front channels, we've said that the Syrian situation needs to be addressed. And the people of Syria votes have to be accepted. And the people of Syria's mission or project of having a government which reflects them has to be accepted as well. So we have not sided with Assad regime, nor have we said that Assad has to go at any cost. We've never said that. That's one aspect. The other aspect is we have a strategic framework agreement with the United States, not with Iran. So, and we chose that. Our parliament voted for it. Our prime minister was here talking about that. If we were under the influence of Iran to the extent you mentioned, or you perceived, then why would we have a strategic framework agreement with the United States? Why would we go and share intelligence in counterterrorism, in political cooperation, with the United States? We're choosing the United States here. So we're not under the influence to the extent or to the level or understanding people perceive that. However, is Iraq a very strong country which can make its own decision and have all the army and everything else so that it doesn't need anybody else? No. Iraq is in transforming. Iraq was destroyed as a country after 2003. The political system collapsed. The governing, even a police officer had no authority after 2003. He had to regain that authority. So the whole system collapsed after that, and we are trying to build, rehabilitate our infrastructure and our country. We need everybody. We cannot afford having enemies. Iranians have more than 1,000-kilometer border. So we cannot afford having that problem. We had 8 years war with them. We now have tribes on cross. We have religious tourism. We have shared wells, oil wells. We have shared water streams. So we cannot afford having bad relationship with Iran or anybody else. We cannot afford to have bad relationship with Saudi Arabia or anybody else. So that's an issue, one aspect. The other aspect is we are deciding who do we partner with respect to our integrity and our internal affairs. And we don't want to get involved with others. With the Iranians, we want to resolve the MEK because we don't want the Mujahideen movement to be an issue between us and Iran, because we don't want to interfere in the Iranian affairs. This is where we're coming from. We don't want to have any bad relationship with anybody. We've gone out of our way to have that strong relationship with all our neighbors, and we were willing to continue with that.
I interviewed the head of FSA in Istanbul, Turkey. He said about Mr. Nouri al-Maliki. He said Mr. Nouri al-Maliki helped Bashar Assad regime, strongly helped them.
So the Turks, have they not helped overtly the anti-Assad movement? They have provided a lot of things. From our side, what have we provided Assad with? Nothing. We have not given the oil, we have not given them money, we have not given them any borders opened up, we have not allowed for weapons to go to Syria when we have control of that aspect of it. What have we provided? We have been more neutral. Let's put it this way. More than 2 years ago...
Shia rebels
but that's
are fighting in Syria.
By the support of the government? Definitely not. By the support of the political parties of Iraq? Not. If people go to some other country and then go to Syria, we can't control that. But let's put it this way. Has the government supported it? No. We said more than 2 years ago that you cannot have force to change the Syrian regime. It has to be a political process. Now, after more than 2 years, people realize that we were right. We have been more consistent on the Syrian issue than any other, and I will challenge that, than any other country in the whole region. Everybody else changed their position. We didn't, because we were clear. We don't want the bloodshed of the Syrians. We don't want to be a party to more violence in Syria. And we know the Syrian situation. Our brothers, they have to have a political process. We have been more consistent than anybody else. Where others are unhappy with our movement, well, we have a political process. We have a government elected freely by the people, and they are reflecting that. We don't want to go and change regimes all over the place. It's not our job.
That's right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Shukran.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.